Here we go.
All right.
Guess who, everybody? It's Joe Cioffi and Matt Myers, our intern. So Matt is gaining such valuable forecast experience. He's learning how to manipulate hurricanes off the East Coast. He's learning how to manipulate heat waves and all the rest of it. So you're doing pretty good.
Yeah, I have some nice ties with the government. You know, they got me into nice weather manipulating equipment and stuff. So I can do some.
All right, let's. We will now attempt to get serious. Hi, everybody. It's Joe Cioffi. As I said, Matt Myers here.
Good to see everyone again.
Matt will be down the road one day. You'll see Matt probably on some television station somewhere, or maybe on his own YouTube channel. And he is the future of the weather world. So. And I will one day hopefully be retiring from it, which works for me. So we're going to start right front and center with Hurricane Chris, and it did become a hurricane. Actually, it was probably a hurricane early this afternoon. I'm not sure why the Hurricane Center. A lot of times the Hurricane Center, as soon as they go out there, they get a plane report, and it's obvious that it's a hurricane. They immediately will do an in-between upgrade. But for whatever reason today, maybe because it's far enough offshore and there's no land impact coming, that they decided to just wait for the 5 o'clock advisory. We won't fault them for that. But you look at this, Matt. The system's really gotten nicely organized. There's a well-defined eye.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The eye is very well defined. All those clouds that were originally in it are now starting to clear up, really giving it that really nice cylindrical feature. I also noticed that recently on more current satellite updates, the northern side of the storm has really been blowing up. All those convective clouds are really been showing, which I think is a sign of showing how much this is strengthening.
One of the reasons why it's taken a while, and that flash frame, is because there's been some trouble at the Weather Service has been having with loading their website. So just try to forgive that. But one of the reasons why it took a little longer for this to strengthen to a hurricane is that it's basically been sitting over the same spot for the last 36 hours or so, and the ocean water temperatures over the area it's been sitting on actually were cooled by a significant amount. Down from low 80s to mid 70s, and that really kind of held it back a bit. But now that it's moving to the northeast, there's a window here where it could probably strengthen a bit more as it moves over to some warmer water.
Yeah, I've heard some people already on social media saying they think it can get up to Cat 2, Cat 3. I think Cat 3's pushing it.
I think two could happen. 2 could happen in a hurry. That could happen 6 hours from now, and you get a pressure fall of 12 or 15 millibars. Yeah, Cat 3, I don't know if there's going to be time for that because it won't be long if it starts to accelerate to the northeast that you're going to have this thing starting to move over some colder water. By the way, bone dry air over here, and the outflow. Oftentimes, when you have a hurricane passing very close to the coastline, relatively speaking, if you're in the right spot, you can enjoy some really beautiful weather, and that's what's happening here up and down the East Coast. You've got this front coming, and normally this would be a situation where the humidity would be coming up, but all that tropical moisture has basically been cut off because of the hurricane developing, and instead we had a day today where we burned up into the low and mid 90s, but the humidity was down in the 20 to 30% range. It was just, to me, it could be like that every day in the summer. I wouldn't have a problem with it.
Well, maybe that's you, but other people like to disagree.
All right, but if they disagree, they can't be on the show, and that's it. So, all right. So, where do you see this going now? Because it is going to be just offshore, quote unquote, relatively speaking. Where do you see this headed?
Well, I see this headed more towards the Canadian Maritimes, Newfoundland, that area. Just given the tilt.
Newfoundland.
I can't pronounce that right. Shucks.
Newfoundland.
Newfoundland.
Not Newfoundland.
Oh.
Newfoundland.
Newfoundland.
There you go.
All right. Well, hopefully I can pronounce it correctly for the rest of this video.
Please.
I will attempt to.
We have those who watch from.
I don't mean to insult anyone.
No. I understand, but I'm saving you agony. Just
thank you.
Go on. So go ahead. You were saying.
So it can impact that area based off the tilt of the trough moving in and how fast it's going to bring it up to northeast.
All right. So let's bring that. Let's bring the upper air into the mix here, and we can take a look at what's happening from that respect. You know what? I'm going to go. I think the fairer view, the better view, might be this North Atlantic view, because this will really, highlight the upper air. This is the surface map for 8 o'clock this evening, where you can see there's Chris, and of course it's offshore. Now we'll put the upper air up. There you go. So go ahead. You were saying.
So this trough that's swinging through the northeast right now, which is an association,
and that's this upper low that's sitting in Labrador, and the trough that extends southwestward from there.
Yeah, positively tilted trough, and because it's positively tilted, the storm's going to race more northeast than, let's say, we would have with our typical nor'easters with those negatively tilted troughs, and they go more northwest-northeast.
Okay, so let me bring we'll put it up on the paint box here. Oh, come on. I love it sometimes when these things, when your computer slows to a crawl. And we'll bring the paint box up for everybody to see, so we can describe, we can really get into what you were just saying. So here's that upper air, and this is again for this evening. Whoops. Got to maneuver this just a little bit. Okay, so when you say when you're saying a positively tilted trough, what you're saying is that the axis of that trough is tilted northeast, southwest. So it's like this, correct?
Correct.
Okay, as opposed to a negatively tilted trough, which would be tilted northwest, southeast. So as this rotates around, here's Chris right there. Okay, and unlike the trough that we saw go over the weekend, which passed too far to the north and kind of left Chris in no man's land, this one is extending far enough south to, basically punt it up to the northeast.
I also believe, isn't the area of high pressure that was over us kind of shifting more southwest, also pushing?
Well, you do have what's left of the Atlantic ridge, and we can outline that because that is way down here. So here's your Atlantic ridge, and that's weakened. Okay, so there's your flow. Here's your upper high is actually pretty far to the south. It's almost off. Well, that's actually an upper low. So there's the extension of the upper high that comes out. It's very narrow, very east-west, and yeah, you're getting that weakening. So it opens up the alleyway, and the upper winds. If you follow the height lines here, there's your upper flow. So it's basically getting caught in the westerlies as that trough picks it up and lifts it up to the northeast. So the next question is, where do we go from here? Excuse me, with our own weather, and we'll bring the map back up, and we'll move it forward. So there's there's how the upper trough, that positively tilted trough, just picks it up, punts it away to the northeast. We here, on the other hand, are going to get that nice northerly flow that brings down some pretty decent dry air for the next couple of days. There's no sign of any heat or humidity coming back here for maybe not until Friday at the earliest.
Yeah, I agree. Although there is that interesting thing going on with Saturday. I can't talk about it too much because even myself, I'm not exactly 100% sure what's going on Saturday. But it does interest me based off what the model's saying, because I'm not really seeing too much of like a kick in order to get precipitation started, but the model is suggesting that there will be some form of precipitation. So I want to look more into that in terms of, hey, are we going to get rain on Saturday or Sunday or not?
All right. Before we do that, I want to just finish off the whole tropics thing, because the other issue in the tropics is with the remnants of Beryl, which are now moving off the coast of Hispaniola and Puerto Rico and heading toward the Bahamas. Now, one of the this loop to me, Matt, is very interesting because you've got 4 players here. You have, of course, the remnants of Beryl, which look disorganized, elongated northwest, southeast. You have Chris to the north. You have this upper low that is sitting northeast of Chris that was kind of acting as the block, holding Chris back. Now that upper low is starting to move away to the northeast. And then you got this cold front that's coming down from the north. So the alleyway for Chris is right in between. But with respect to Beryl, oh, you know what? I got to move it over so everybody can see. Okay, so there. I'm sorry about that, folks. So there you have the elongated area of moisture from Beryl from Hispaniola northwestward, starting to move into the Bahamas. Chris off the Carolina coast. The upper low that's to the northeast of Chris, and the cold front coming down from the north. Up until now, that upper low to the northeast was one of the reasons why Chris wasn't moving very much, if moving at all. Now that is starting to get kicked away to the northeast, that front is coming along. The upper trough is kicking that upper low out. Chris is getting kicked out. Right now, if you look at the clouds down where Beryl is, you've got a lot of wind shear going on. There's some strong winds aloft, but one of the things that could happen is as Chris moves away to the northeast, particularly when it starts to accelerate away to the northeast, you're going to see those upper level winds in the Bahamas relax. So this might open up a possibility of this regenerating, and the Hurricane Center brings this up in their discussion. So I don't think we could rule that out. That's something we're going to have to watch. And yeah, we're going to go look at the Saturday stuff. And
before we do that, I just want to point out something.
Yes.
I believe this darker coloring around Beryl is the Saharan dust.
Yes. And in fact, look how extensive it is, by the way. You can see it into the northwest Caribbean and even into the southwest Gulf of Mexico. It's fairly extensive. And, oftentimes with these seedling tropical waves as they move along, if there's a ton of African dust around, those systems have a really tough time developing.
They do, and that's why I think Beryl's also having a lot of trouble right now, because not only is it all the factors you just said, but also that dust too. Chris is just outside that, so it makes sense to why it kind of just exploded the past couple of days into what it is now. But Beryl makes sense.
You know what? While we're here, let me see if I can. Let me pull up another loop, and we'll go a little wider, so we can explore that African dust scenario. And let's see if this loads. As I said, the Hurricane Center. I don't know if it's because everybody is going in there at the same time. This picture is actually on the first frame, is left over from last night. So just gonna have to. There we go. Starting to load now. Mm-hmm. Look at that. Look at that area. The dust area goes all the way back. Trains all the way back, almost to the African coast. Looks like some, a good chunk came off and just kind of moved its way to the west. Now there's another, looks like some more coming off. That's very interesting. This is going to have impact if it's still there a month from now when we start to get into the Cape Verde season. And actually with Beryl, it was pretty remarkable that it developed to begin with, because it was, basically cocooned in its own little world, and somehow it was able to isolate itself away from all this dust and dry air that's out there. So very, very interesting. Good catch there, young man.
Thank you.
All right. So one other thing we can look at is the Hurricane Center's forecast for this, and they actually, I'm going to try, let me see if I can center this a bit better, but they actually hold it as a hurricane as it passes southeast of Nova Scotia, and then they bring it very close to eastern Newfoundland, St. John's, Newfoundland, and actually they held the identity of this as a tropical storm all the way across the Atlantic out to day 5 when it's just to the west of England and Ireland. I was looking at some of the other models, and most of the other models actually deflect the remnant low, or at this point it would be a post-tropical system, they deflect it more northwest, closer to the southeast coast of Greenland, rather than taking it into Western Europe. But this will at least be something to pay attention to in the longer term, as far as Chris's track once it becomes post-tropical.
Yeah, I've also actually noticed that last week when I was working here on Thursday, Brittany was talking to me. Brittany's one of our other meteorologists we have here.
Yes, Brittany Bohr.
And she specifically told me, like, hey, you should keep an eye on Chris. I'm like, well, okay, but shouldn't we, like, not care about it after it goes through our area? And she goes, no, you have to care about it all the time because it affects so many different places around the world. And everywhere matters. So we looked at, I believe it was the GFS.
Well, it also has, these storms in their positions. We've seen how typhoons in the Pacific, when they recurve up, they tend to energize the Gulf of Alaska low, and in the wintertime, or in the late fall, early wintertime, they can be catalysts for cold air intrusions out of the Arctic into the United States. So yeah, it all has impact, and of course these Atlantic storms, when they go up there, if they become mega extratropical or post-tropical storms, they can impact the upper flow all the way down the line. So absolutely, you pay attention to these things. And we even saw last year a case where we had a Category 4 hurricane in Ophelia that formed way out in the eastern Atlantic, as far east as I've ever seen a storm of that strength, and head up toward Ireland and England, back in October. So yeah, you do pay attention. She gives you wise advice. Okay, so let's jump to Saturday, because you are looking at that maybe as the next chance for any shower or thunderstorm activity. And by the way, much of the weather across the country is, there's nothing really extreme going on. Some isolated pockets where it's hotter than average, but for the most part, the weather is relatively tame, in my view, for this time of year anyway.
I agree, although we did just have a haboob move through Arizona due to the monsoon.
Okay, explain what that is.
The monsoon or haboob, or
yeah, the haboob.
So basically, a haboob is basically like a giant dust storm, not sandstorm,
yes,
but more of dust storm. And with it being so dry out in Arizona for most of the time, it's so hot that the wind can really pick up the dust very easily off the ground, since there's not that much moisture to hold it together. So it creates this big dust storm. It can cause a lot of problem for the people in that area.
Well, you have some excessive heat that's been going on in parts of Southern California, but that's abated to some degree as well. But when you look at the weather around the country, you're not seeing, you're seeing the occasional heat wave bursts here and there, but it's not, it's not crazy. And I don't see for us, and I've said this for days now, I don't see us getting into any kind of long-range, long-term, extensive heat and humidity as we go through the next couple of weeks, because the upper air pattern says no, that probably won't happen. This is Friday's surface map, and the GFS does generate some kind of surface low that's probably a reflection of the remnants of Beryl, and actually does something with it. So, but it's out there. And you do have a bit of development here Saturday evening with some scattered thunderstorms. I think it's probably worth a mention in the forecast. You still don't have a really saturated air mass in the tropical saturated air mass in the east, to the point where you would have widespread activity for thunderstorms going through the weekend. And then after that, it looks like the next weather front is going to be probably approaching here sometime next Tuesday.
Yeah, I agree. I'm still not exactly 100% sure why we're going to get something on Saturday, but I really want to look into it and figure that out.
Well, you've got it in your forecast, and we'll see how it goes.
We will.
The upper air might give us a clue, so why don't we take a look, and we'll back it up. So here's your northerly flow going into the end of the week. It's hard to see if there's some kind of little shortwave here, maybe, that's coming down around this upper low that's off the New Jersey coast. I don't know if some of that might be a reflection of Beryl getting involved. It's a tough call. And and you might wind up with a situation like you have here with Chris, where if you do wind up with a system, Beryl redeveloping, you may have some subsidence that'll go on and basically stabilize the atmosphere here and prevent any scattered showers or storms. So I think you have arguments in both directions here. And then as we move into next week, and I guess I'm going to have to back up one run, and I'll go a little wider. You see on the GFS, and the European wasn't really that different, to tell you the truth, but you can see on the GFS, this persistent troughing with a bit of a vortex there in Hudson Bay, and you get short waves that rotate around it, but there wants to be a trough in the east. It relaxes somewhat, but in the longer term, it seems to me like we're going to stay with this idea, at least over the next 2 weeks, where does it get hot for a day or two? Yes. Could it get humid on a day or two? Yes. But that's about as long as I think you're going to see something happen, something with respect to long-term heat.
Yeah, I agree. It's also interesting when you look at these upper air maps. You can look at these troughs that are eventually going to be coming into our area. You can kind of see them more towards like Alaska or so, but you can eventually see them like, oh, hey, based off the mono, they're moving almost due east from the troughs perspective, and that's eventually going to hit us at some point.
All right, so let's summarize Chris really fast. What's it do? What's doing? Where's it going?
So right now, it's just an intensifying hurricane. Cat 1 right now, probably going to approach Cat 2, not Cat 3, and eventually hit the Canadian Maritimes and possibly Europe after that.
Okay, and although it's going to transform into a post-tropical system, we should, again, by the way, just really fast, disclaimer for everybody, and this is, I want everybody to get used to this. When it comes to these tropical systems, if they are impacting your area, you need to check weather.gov, the National Weather Service, or your local government officials regarding any decisions. Canadian Met Canada. Also, if you're watching from southeastern Canada, Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, that's where you know where to go to get information, because we can kind of speak to things in a general sense, but with respect to specifics and with respects to your own area, you know what your climate is. We know what the climate is where we are physically, but we don't necessarily know what the what's the little funny things that happen in certain places that nobody knows about unless you're there to experience it. So your weather service office is the place to go. Let's see. Okay, Israel. I noticed the past 2 nights Toms River got much cooler than by me. Did happen, though. It was just one town away. They got down to 52 and you 61. Hey, any kind of wind, Israel, if you had any kind of wind off the water, even if it was only 3 or 4 miles an hour, that could have been enough. The Toms River Station is well inland, so it does tend to, the winds there, oftentimes do tend to drop off to dead calm. So perhaps they didn't have, you may have had the slightest breeze that helped to hold the temperatures up. And the closer you are to the coast, the dew points were higher too, and that probably held your temperatures up as well. Let's see, Timothy Veltman. He had a severe thunderstorm warning earlier up in Albany, saw 3 small trees down, had to drive down 2 of them. You know what? That brings up a good thing to do. Why don't we take a look at what's happening? Let me see if I can find the local radar. We do actually have a slight risk of severe going on through parts of upstate New York, a marginal risk extending down to us. The line doesn't look all that impressive to me. I'll freshen it up really fast. Let's.
I did take a quick peek at that storm when it was severe warned, and even then it didn't look too impressive for me. Obviously, something still happened to you, which is not always the best.
It might have peaked out when it was over Albany, because now it's moved over into central Vermont and New Hampshire. Still a few, looks like a few strong cells there. And the southern part of that, the storms are really kind of fractured out, some in PA, then you got a big gap into the middle Hudson Valley. I don't know how much of that storm activity is really going to survive before it makes it down our way. I threw it in the forecast for tonight, just a slight chance. Here's the Storm Prediction Center's map. And so you've got this marginal risk area with that small area of slight risk, northeastern New York, Vermont, and New Hampshire. And also up in the northern plains and in the northern Rockies, we've got a severe thunderstorm watch up. This is as of almost 6:30 Eastern time. So if you're watching this later on a replay, these radars are dated, so bear that in mind. Check your local National Weather Service office at weather.gov if you're watching from an area that's getting severe weather, so that you have the latest information. But there's a slight to enhanced risk there. And then, of course, you've got this sort of general area of thunderstorms that's peppered through most of the areas that you would expect to see general thunderstorms going on at this time of year. All right, so let me just shrink this, shrink that, and find us. Sorry, got to maneuver all these maps around. I got to clean up this board one of these days. So let's bring you up to the top, and let's find a question for you to tackle here.
All right.
As we, by the way, welcome to everybody on tonight. Appreciate you all being here. Okay. NM weather. The eye was visible clearly at 2 p.m., especially on the IR radar. Even on tropical tidbits, referred to the storm as a hurricane. I agree. It was probably a hurricane by late this morning or early this afternoon. I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to speculate. I'm not casting any criticisms here. I'm thinking that because the storm was offshore and not a threat to any land at the moment, that there was no real big rush to update this. Always Smiling, who watches us from Ireland, the Met office, Met Ariane, said that we're going to get Hurricane Chris next week. Well, as a post-tropical storm, it's not impossible. Let's watch how the models take that, evolve with that in the coming days. Right now, they seem to be deflecting it more to the northwest, but the Hurricane Center is looking, they're looking at all these other hurricane tracking models that they use and coming up with the idea that something may hold together as it moves across the Atlantic in some fashion in a post-tropical storm. So we'll keep an eye on it and pay some attention to it over the coming days. And you're looking at a new weather station. Can you the weather stations that are out there? Because I get this question all the time. And what do you think are some of the better weather stations? I've seen people mention Davis and AccuRite and a few others. Is there any one that you've heard of?
In terms of local stations, not exactly. I know the big ones, the big Weather Central, basically, that being OU and just Norman, Oklahoma, all that area. Obviously, we have State College, we have AccuWeather.
No. I'm talking about the home weather stations.
Oh, okay, my bad. Yeah, see, I got confused there.
Okay, that's all right. Thermometer, anemometer, and that kind of thing.
Okay. So out of what your regular weather instruments?
Well, what do you think? I don't have one of those elaborate weather stations, believe it or not.
Okay.
But I have a real simple one. But you talk with your buddies and friends in school. Who's got what?
I do have an Oregon Scientific, weather kit, not really weather station.
Okay.
At my house, it has an anemometer, a rain gauge, and a thermal hygrosensor. I don't exactly like it, not because it's bad, just more the fact of everything's wireless, which makes it obviously very easy to understand, have everything hooked up. But for an anemometer, that measures wind speed, by the way. I don't like it when that updates every 45 seconds. I need the constant, this is the wind right now.
Right.
But in terms of the rain gauge and thermal hygrosensor, rain gauge measures the amount of rainfall that has fallen, and the thermal hygrosensor can measure the UV index directly at my house, or the temperature and relative humidity also at my house. I'm okay with those updating every minute. That's not I need the information right now as it's happening kind of thing. So, in terms of weather instrumentation, I would have to probably go against the anemometer there, unless you have a little handheld one that can tell you the wind speed instantly, and just go for more of your temperatures with thermometers, or again my thermal hygrosensor that can tell you UV index and relative humidity. Israel
has the AccuRite with the rain gauge, and he got it for just over $100, and it really was 99 plus tax, so it came out to 105. It's awesome with the wind speed, he says. So you guys, folks, when you're doing research on this stuff, a lot of the weather groups that are on Facebook, they're always mentioning all sorts of different brands that they use. So there's a lot out there, and some of it's pretty interesting. I don't have any personal experience with them. One of these days, somebody's going to give it to me for a Christmas present, I guess, but we'll see. With Wimbledon on this week, Scott Briller, do you or Matt know if the tropical storm has any tropical storm has ever hit London? Well, there's been impact from tropical systems a number of times over the long term that occasionally do come into Northwest Europe. I'd have to do some and into England and Ireland that we saw last year with Ophelia. I'll have to do some digging. I don't know any off the top of my head, but I don't really pay too much attention to weather up in that part of the world. But that's an interesting question, and I'll pose it out there for someone in the know. I'm sure there's probably some history that tropical systems have impacted. But as far as this weekend is concerned, I don't think that this is going to be a weekend issue. Well, now we're talking Saturday and Sunday, so I got to be careful because it's only Tuesday. So just really fast. Let me bring up Europe. And I'm doing this off camera, so let's see. I mean, at least off the new GFS, there actually are some showers being that develop over parts of western England and Scotland on Friday. Not too much on Saturday, and then looks like some kind of trough that comes in for later Sunday, Monday. But I don't see the representation of the tropical system on the GFS. It looks like it gets deflected again on this run up more toward Greenland and Iceland. So we'll have to just watch how it evolves as we go through the weekend. And let's see if we got any more. Okay, I don't know what this is. He says Israel just says he has a friend that has it's something called a devious vantage, and he loved it. It broke. Now he's got an expensive AccuRite, a really good one with a lightning detector on it. Oh, nice! Cool. They even come with lightning detectors. Jeez, badly need the rain there. Oh yeah, it's been bone dry over England and Ireland. You guys are used to getting showers almost every day, and they're not happening, unfortunately. But there might be a pattern change coming up in the longer term for England, Ireland, and Northwest Europe. I noticed that a couple of days ago. I didn't give it a good look today. Your grass is yellow. Actually, it's bone dry. Been bone dry on Long Island. Mine is also bone dry and burned as well. So I get it. Believe me. Johnny Quest wants to know, do me, or you, see a wet pattern returning to Western Virginia? Our local forecaster says a very wet pattern, sees a very wet pattern for Western Virginia. What do you see now? Bear in mind that they were sitting kind of in that frontal boundary for weeks and getting pounded with rain, getting a bit of a break here with regards to the weather that you're seeing right now. You know, Johnny Quest, one of the things that we have to look at, it's going to depend largely on the strength and depth of the trough in the east. If it stays weak and doesn't extend far enough south, then yeah, you might get back into a bit of a rainy pattern, although at least weather systems seem to be wanting to move along. So you'll get these pushes where you'll see it dry out. It does look on the GFS that at least once we get beyond this week and later, next week and into early next and into next week, your chances for thunderstorms are probably going to increase somewhat, particularly if we start seeing that troughing coming into the eastern part of the United States. And Stephen White is already reminding me of the winter of 2011-2012 being very mild. That was an El Nino year. That was in a very strong El Nino year. So I don't know that that the possible developing El Nino now is going to get to that extent. We don't know. Is it east base? Is it west base? Is it central based? So that's something for way down the road. We're not worried about winter yet.
It is interesting to mention, though, that during that winter is when we had the really bad snowstorm on October 29th, 2011. The storm itself wasn't bad, but just because it had so much heavy, wet snow falling, and the trees weren't, their leaves are still on the trees, it brought down a lot of branches and stuff.
But, one thing with the El Nino, Stephen White, is that if it does fire up, it fire up over the next couple of months, it might impact the Atlantic side of the hurricane season, reducing activity. So it is something that we're going to will be paying attention to in the shorter term because of its possible impact into the hurricane season. But it's going to have to really blossom out in a big way, I think, to have a serious impact at this point, because we're already into July. You've got your peak months coming August into early October. So this El Nino, if it's going to have some serious impact, it's probably going to have to fire up in a big hurry.
The one thing I'm thinking of is winter 2014-2015 was a very active winter, and we had a weak El Nino that year. So I'm curious to think if, hey, can something set up similar to that or not, depending on how the El Nino develops.
Well, it could. These are all questions for the long term. Let's see. I'm just running through all the, I want to make sure I didn't miss anybody on questions, and it looks like we got everybody. Plus, we're beginning to run out of time here. Mm-hmm. So we're going to wrap it up here and say goodbye to everybody at this point. Just really quick, as always, folks, there's an Amazon link on the description of this video, and if you shop on Amazon using that link, you get your stuff. Amazon throws this channel a little bit of coin, and I can get myself a cigar for the drive home. We are a participant in the Amazon Services LLC Associates Program, which is an affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for this channel to earn fees by linking to Amazon.com and its affiliated sites. Thank you for those of you who have used it along the way. And we will be on tonight, 9:15, for the Joe Cioffi, the Joe and Joe Weather Show on Facebook, which we will then upload to YouTube once it's all done. And we will be back probably at around the same time tomorrow. Say goodbye, Matt.
Bye, everyone.
All right, folks. We'll see you later on Facebook or tomorrow right here on YouTube. Thanks again for being here tonight.